everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and give it a couple more seconds so we can get started. Um, and I guess we'll just go ahead and get started now. I just wanted to, I'm Justin from Printistat. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everyone for attending today's webinar about our partnership with Solibri. Let me introduce everyone that will be talking today. First, we have Ben McMillan from Printistat, John Lipp from Solibri, and again, I'm Justin. So Ben, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know what you do?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to the webinar today. I really appreciate your time. And I know everybody's busy, but you taking the time to actually sit down with us for a few minutes is greatly appreciated. And I am the account manager for Pennsylvania. I'm the newest member of Printistat, but so far I love working with these guys, and I've loved working with you all as well. And I look forward to what we've got going today. I'll hand it off to John.
Hi, I'm John Lipp, Customer Success Manager at Solibri, and basically I help customers find solutions to their problems.
And again, it's Justin again from Printistat. I am the account rep for the software sales, and I cover Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia markets. So that is where I am. So some of you might know me from that. The point of today's webinar is to introduce Printistat and our partnership with Solibri. Printistat has been around since 1954, spans 7 locations in 3 different states, but we have customers nationally. Our customers have come to rely on Printistat for products and services such as wide format printing, repair and servicing, printers and scanners, signs and graphics, surveying tools, the 3D laser scanning, and software sales and support. And today, that's what we would like to introduce you to, our newest partnership with Solibri. Ben?
So, just a quick note before we get started. Why did Printistat choose Solibri? So obviously, as Justin mentioned, Printistat has been around for 70 years. Long-standing business. We like to do business with companies that show stability, reliability, and responsibility. Solibri so far has a foothold in 99 countries, which just shows, it demonstrates effectiveness in many different types of economies and workforces. So, a little bit about who Solibri is designed for and what it does. Celebri's customers are going to consist mainly of architects, engineering firms, construction companies, and major building owners. Solibri provides quality assurance tools for the construction, design, and BIM coordination industries. And its tools are designed to help construction teams ensure that buildings are built with fewer mistakes and rework, and to make sure that the design and construction process is more productive and cost effective. And without, I don't want to say too much because he's got a lot to go through. So I'll let John go ahead and take it over.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, as you mentioned, Solibri is basically a rules-based engine. It's a model checking software that can validate your building information model that you'll export out as an IFC. So basically check for different use cases across the entire building life cycle and for multiple stakeholders and parties. So the purpose of this demonstration of Solibri is kind of walk you through the logical steps of taking you from opening a model on a CDE, a common data environment, classifying some of the information so you know what those components are so that you can run checks on those components, and then communicate the issues that you find that you run these rules-based checks on, and then report out those issues to those parties. And then we'll wrap up with information takeoff, which essentially is reporting out quantities, but we call them information takeoff because you can report out any information, not just the quantities. So the first item would be CDEs, common data environments, that's what it stands for. We have integrations into those as well as integrations into VCF. live connections, which are basically BCF servers. And this is a good place to kind of touch on OpenBIM and OpenBIM standards that are from Building Smart International. We embrace OpenBIM essentially to not discriminate against vendors, not prefer vendors over one another, and essentially it makes sense for these common data environments, which are essentially these silos, these online environments where you're going to house, manage all this enormous amount of data that your project's going to have, your sheets, your PDFs, your model drawings or templates or whatnot, that allow you to manage that and communicate those documents to different parties. But the bottom line is you would want to have that open to as many softwares as possible to allow these people to communicate their problems and their files along together. So we support the following, or actually what you can see on the slide here: Aconex, Catenda, BIM 360, ACC, Autodesk Construction Cloud, Builder.com, or Builder.com, I should say, Trimble Connect, OneDrive, and SharePoint. And hopefully some of these are familiar or you make use of them yourselves. From here, I'll just jump right into the software, and you can see how this works in Solibri. This is the interface of Solibri. And at the top, you can see what's called the layout bar. You can kind of think of it as a ribbon, and this just groups logically where these, what we call views, and you can open up and add views to any of these layouts. But it kind of follows along the progression. Your file layout is where you'll set up your project, set up your settings. You'll find your recent files here. This is where your integration connections live. And then as I progress through this demonstration, you'll see some of these other layouts that have these different views, and I'll discuss those as well. But first, I want to tackle this integration. So you can see basically two different groupings here. We have some Documents API, and again, OpenBIM. Documents API is a standard that Building Smart has that allows different vendors to create this API of theirs. It's an open API that makes it easier for other softwares like Vectorworks, Solibri, whatnot, to connect up into those third parties. And these other available integrations, these are one that we use their APIs to connect up into. And again, you can see I have one to Catenda, one to BIM 360, and one to OneDrive. Basically mixing and matching some of these integrations. You can have multiple mix and match. And again, we don't choose one over the other. So I want to show you the best of all three. So what one of these would look like, I could open up, for instance, Catenda. You basically get all the goodies that you have within these. So Catenda has a dashboard of topics. You can view the model. This is the model that is housed in Catenda. I'm going to actually be opening the model off of BIM 360, or I mean ACC, I should say. But you get all the benefits of security. You have to have users that log in with passwords. They have their secure, or whatever the security setup as, along with all the communications when something gets updated. You get emailed out and whatnot. I'm showing Catenda also to show the BCF Live connector, which I'll come to later in the demonstration. But I'm going to actually house the model on ACC, so this might be familiar to you. And this is the basic structure of this project. I have IFCs, again, an open standard that we embrace. IFC is essentially you'll export your model from Revit or Vectorworks or ArchiCAD to an IFC file. It stands for Industry Foundation Class, and it basically standardizes all the information and geometry into something that you can transfer, which is essentially what and you need to do this if you want to create up in some other vendor like ArchiCAD if you export out from Revit. And then this SMC folder is where the project is I'm going to load. So I'll go ahead and do that. So you click Open Models, and then at the top here you can see I already have these connections to OneDrive, Catenda. I'm going to open it right from BIM 360, and if you recall, the structure of that project, I have my project files, IFC, SMC, and this is where this model lives. It's nice. It gives you the version control. This is the first version of the model I saved. I'll click Open. And this is going to load the model. And it's the background on this. And again, this is a model that comes from Building Smart. It's a multidisciplined medical office building of a clinic. It's a architectural, the MEP and the structural. And as these loads, you'll see they'll pop up. And this is downloading it straight off the web from ACC. That's where you can see these versions here again. If I go back into ACC, you can see these match up, same names here, the architectural, MEP, and structural. I didn't load these individual, basically they're just broken up, the MEP into these other three trades or three files. But I've loaded the MEP, architectural, and structural. And yeah, from that, I'll just jump right into kind of checking and the further in the process of what you do in Solibri. So next would logically come classification. And what classification touches on is information. You're using a building information model, and information is used with classification to categorize spaces or rooms, you might call them in Revit, or zones in ArchiCAD, your spaces and your components. You're going to be mapping, for instance, functions of space, or you might be mapping directly to different properties that might exist in different locations, depending on whether you're using Revit. It might be under a data property group, or it might be under ArchiCAD in some other standardized location where you'd want to find that information. Or you can map our building lifecycle early on. You can create some spaces to functions of space. So your corridors would map to your circulation space, the same as your hallways and your stairs. And what this does is improves your data consistency and accuracy, so that it kind of gives you wiggle room where you don't need to, I mean, you can adhere to a very strict naming convention, but it kind of gives you some wiggle room in order to know that your water closet that you have as a type WC is also a water closet if you name it toilet, so you can map that, and it gives you, and essentially you need to use classification most of the time when using Solibri in order to know what the component is you want to check. You can't just check a plumbing fixture. You don't know if it's classified as a sink or a lavatory, or if it's a toilet, for whatever accessibility checks you want to show. And with that said, I'll just jump right back into Solibri here. And again, this is the model, and I'll touch on some of the bottom, basically the baseline of what you probably would need to know if you're going to use classification is that this is a multidiscipline project. And the nice thing about IFC is that it'll always have the same structure. As I expand these out, you can see it has the project, it has the site, and then it has the building. And underneath that building, you'll see floors. So I could turn on my first floor. I could turn on my doors. And then you can see all the doors on the first floor. And Solibri has a nice footprint control, so you can kind of see where you are in the building. And all of these components have their own properties. So I click on a door, you'll see that information from Revit. This is a Revit model, I might have mentioned, where you'll see the identity data property group. You'll see actual dimensions that come from Revit, along with some of the actual standardized properties that come over from IFC standards, which would be either the PSET door common. That's what they call this property set. So you can have the fire ratings and whatnot. And again, this is a benefit of IFC, is that it standardizes these so that you can open this in ArchiCAD and get the same information that you would have in Revit. And again, this is a multidiscipline. So if I turn on, for instance, to go into my first floor, I can turn on my columns and see where those are. And then a nice thing is that it actually groups your systems as well. So I could turn on, for instance, my pipes and my pipe fittings here. So here's the gist of it. You can navigate around, and the model layout essentially is where you'd query, do interrogation of your model walkthroughs, and you can basically get a look and feel of where things are. Another nice thing is if I turn on walls, is that those dimensions and those quantities that come from Revit, Solibri actually creates their own quantities based off of the geometry within the model. So I could actually use this information here to superimpose what the triangles, the mesh of this wall would calculate as the area. It also calculates some areas of openings or areas of windows. If I come over here and click on this, you can see there's a 56 square feet of windows on this wall where there's no doors, and vice versa, where there's doors on this wall and whatnot, which essentially you'd use for your quantity takeoff, or you can use all of these properties to classify your components, which is I'm going to do now. Again, I'm going to click a view that's open in this model layout. It's my classification view that I have open. I'm going to open up two classifications. And again, I'm using an integration into OneDrive. This is on my personal OneDrive of Solibri, but I could open it from a shared OneDrive. And if you don't want to, if you say you have security concerns and you can't have these housed on one of these CDs or anywhere on the cloud, Solibri is a desktop application, and all of these could be housed locally. Okay, so but I'm going to load these two classification files. And as these loads, you can see there's two different ones. There's actually some classifications that are brought along from the IFC. This is the uniformat classification. And that's classification. You can see these look to be doors, I think. No, these are flow terminals, but they're coming from a bathroom. So they're classified that based off of their uniformat see if I got any other ones. All right, here's some light fixtures. I could click on a light fixture. And what's nice is these actually get mapped straight from Revit from the assembly code that you might be familiar with under identity data. So that's where it's mapping these. And you can set these up if you want to go to that length. If you embrace IFC, you can actually use the IFC export setups and create your mappings and your, I guess that would be called property manager with your shared parameters to create these classifications yourself. But if you don't do that, Solibri has its own classification mechanism. So for instance, if I look at this mechanical systems classification, and I open its settings, what it's doing is it's taking this property group from your mechanical systems, your ducts, your pipes, or what have you. And it's using the system classification property, and it's just using this =1 to grab that property value to classify those components. And then what it does in settings is whatever that value is, you can color map to whatever you want. I've kind of kept it kind of the same as Revit. I know the supplier and returner are pink and blue. So what you can do is then click on one of these classifications, and it then isolates those in the model so you can see where are my return air ducts and my supply air ducts. And you can expand them out and see those individual air terminals and ducts and whatnot. And so classification, again, it makes things consistent. If you're not, if you want to use mapping, say the values don't map to a specific classification you need, namely function of space, you can actually use the classification rules of the values to then map to a specific classification. So for instance, again, my corridors would map to a circulation space, right? Or CORR dot would be a circulation space, same as a hallway. And you can color code. So say, for instance, my office is here, kind of this drab green, kind of doesn't really stand out. I could change this to be whatever I want to make a nice red color. And now my offices are this color. And I can see where they are in my project again. These would be rooms, but we call them spaces, IFC and spaces in IFC. But if I wanted to, are those the 5 offices? What you can do is use some of these wildcard characters. So you could actually adhere to a very strict naming policy, and you can actually check, which I'll show you with one of our rules, that those are an agreed naming list. But you can also use these wildcard asterisks. So basically, this means that any character or no characters can come before office or after office, and that classifies it as an office. So you can see I have 5 of them here now. After I click OK, boom, I get all these other office data. So now I'll have a more complete look at what my offices are. And you need to do this if you want to create like a space program. Again, across your entire building lifecycle, early on, you can create and check your space programs and your design, schematic design development phases, right? And that's classification in a nutshell. I'll just keep on moving on to the next topic here. So, which then brings us to rules-based checking. You've classified your components, now you want to check them. And you want to check early. The earlier you find your issues, the cheaper they are to fix. If you can catch them in the design phase before things are being built, it's cheaper than when it's in the construction phase and you're running your coordination checks and clashing, where you have to deal with the cost of rework and materials. All the way to checking against requirements such as ADA, where if those problems actually made it into the building, you could deal with actual lawsuits because those are government mandated requirements for, your 17 inches past the latch and wheelchair turning circles. And on top of that, you can align with other disciplines, the basics of clashing and coordination, along with those different requirements, being that COBE, Construction Owners Building Information Exchange, or whatever requirements that you'd have, either in-house through your company or mandated regulated ones through government agencies. And I'm going to show you 5 different example rules, and these are kind of the ones that our customers or our users would use the most, or basically showcase some of the valuable tools that you can use in Solibri. And that would be the clash detection matrix, which is a new rule that came out in the latest version 24.5 of Solibri. Next, I'll show you free area in front. And the beauty of this rule is that you won't have to model your clearances in front of, say, for instance, your doors or your electrical panels, those boxes that you might be modeling with geometry in front of those components to then run a clash on. Instead, Solibri has a rule where it'll actually define that for you. I mentioned agreed list. This is where you can check for naming conventions of libraries or space names or what have you. Effective coverage is a more advanced type of coordinating, say, for instance, your Wi-Fi coverage or line of sight of of exit signs. And last, I'll show you model comparison where you can check for iterations of models. So I'll go ahead and jump back into Solibri here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up some rules. Okay, I'm going to a different layout. This is my checking layout. As you can see, it has a different set of views here. So I have my checking view, which is where my rule sets will live. My results are where the issues are that I'll find, create slides for to then send off to my team. And info, again, is useful not only for the information of the components, but when I'm selecting on issues, they'll give me all the information for that. And what you might have noticed is it opens this little wizard-like dialogue that asks you to select a role. And what a role is essentially, what is your job? What is your use case? How can Solibri help you to achieve that goal? Be it whether it's BIM validation, where you're going to check QA, QC rule sets, and you can look at those. Basically, validating is the information there. Do you have some weird types of columns not supporting things? Or are you running coordination where you're going to be doing clash checking between your different disciplines? Or maybe you're doing energy analysis and you need to make sure that you're pre-checking that all the properties there are there for your energy analysis or your carbon data or what have you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the validation architectural rule set, click next. And I'm going to load another rule set. Again, you can have these up in the cloud, but what I'm going to do is just load one off of my desktop here. This is my Printostat demo, and click open and multi-select those and click OK. And as those load here, you can see this is what a normal rule set has, this nice little kind of hierarchical structure here where I have my clearance checks under BIM validation. So if I expand these out, you can see what a rule, basically how you set it up. So this is the clearance in front of windows, right? You select what the component is you want to check, and you can change this if you don't want to check windows. If you want to check for doors, you can see as I switch between these have two different filters. This is checking for windows with one set of depth requirements, as opposed to this checking for doors with another set. If I click something else, clearance in front of ceilings, it's a whole new rule template. And these templates you can kind of think are what are the recipes that you have to fill in the ingredients, which would be the parameters of what you're wanting to check, right? And I'm just going to show you these three. What I'm going to do is show you how you can actually modify these rule sets. So I have these three examples. I want to add another one. And our rule sets live under our rule set manager. And we have over 50 rule templates. And again, flashing, I guess, infinite number of rules based off of just modifying these parameters. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my rule sets for editing. These are my example rules. You can see there's 3 of them here. I'll open it up for editing, and I'm going to drop in that new clash detection rule. And I'm going to set it to my first example here. And these are where the libraries are. And they come out of the box with different rules set up for disciplines. You can check your MEP, basically like a check for maybe your exhaust intake is too close or to your intake for your supply air. Or we also have actually each individual rule template comes with an example rule that shows you how you can set it up to run a certain type of check for you. But what I'll do is I'll jump back into Solibri and I'm going to run this check of these examples here. And you can see you can actually modify on the fly now this rule that I just added to my list of examples. What I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the parameters of the rule. And again, you can use the default settings, or I can create a custom matrix. And if you're not familiar with what a matrix, clash matrix is, you basically set up what are your rows and columns and where those columns and rows meet or where a clash category would exist, I suppose. And if you're not familiar with IFC, like IFC's spaces, instead you want to use rooms or structural framing instead of IFC beams, you can change these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load a different category here. Again, these live on my OneDrive, and I'm going to open up my discipline categories. So these are the locations from, and you can actually click any location. I can show you how I set it. You just go to your property sets, and this lives under my property group other in Revit and under category. And this is where you'll find those familiar categories. And then once I click OK, it's actually going to set up this matrix for me based off of what is in my model. Now, if you don't have, if for instance, you have an early model and you're going to add more items that aren't present there, that's where you probably want to import an Excel sheet. But I just, for the sake of how easy it is to set these up, this is the way to go for a demonstration. And here, each cell you can see, if I wanted to focus on, say, for instance, ducts versus pipe fittings, and say those are a higher severity or more important to me, I can change the tolerances and change whether or not I want to check different types. Like maybe I want to check for duplicate mechanical equipment or duplicate doors or light fixtures would be a good one. You can change the different types of clashes, but I can change the different severities. So I'm going to say my pipes versus ducts are important to me. I'm going to say maybe my clashes that are internal to my structural model aren't so important. So I will click multi-select and click low. And what I'll do now is I'll just run a check. And as you can see, as it runs, you can see these progress bars go by. And what's nice is I can actually start clicking and looking at issues. And normally the workflow would be you click an issue and you can see these different categories of different problems here. And each one of these rules will have a different way of categorizing. I've jumped to this front of Windows just because Clash was still running. It's now done, but it's basically it'll show you the difference between these categories. Now it's showing me my pipes too close to window. You dig down, it'll tell me the type of pipe, and then it'll actually show me the issue with my pipe, right? So this is the one that I'm going to come to later. But let's jump right back to the matrix, and you'll see how it's actually organized these. It's done a great job of sorting by what's important to me. Again, I said my ducts, pipe fittings versus ducts is what's most important and critical. What you can do is you can actually turn on and off these severities from the checking and focus on just your severe issues. And as you turn these on and off, the rules that don't have those issues disappear, along with the actual listings of results. So if I turn off my high severity issues, which I accidentally did, and turn off my medium, you'll see it'll just drop out to only those high severity issues, right? I'll turn everything back on here, and you can either work from here, but there's a beautiful tool that comes with this clash detection matrix. It's a report here, and you'll see it has the same setup as in the parameters, but it's actually listing the counts of all of these different clashes. So I have ducts versus pipes, 11 ducts or 11 clashes of ducts versus pipe. And what I can do is if I click on this and double click on it, it'll actually just zoom me out to the location of where all these different clashes are, right? So here I can see it actually corresponds to these. What I can do is right click on this cell, say select results, and then it actually jumps into my results view and it takes me to that location of this category of ducts versus pipe. And you see these numbers correspond. I got 11 ducts. But do I really have 11 clashes? If you look at this says there's 2 clashes here, but really these pipes probably correspond to one another. And you probably just need to move them somewhere, and it's probably just one clash. But is it one clash? You can either work from this window here, or you can start looking at the individual issues by selecting on a component such as this pipe. And what you can see is if I go back into this pipe and click issues, it says I have 3 clashes here, right? I also have a clash with a beam, and I can double click on this and it shows me, okay, I've got a clash with a beam. It's not only I have to move this pipe out from the duct, I actually have to move it from the beam as well. If I double click on it, again, it'll take me to that clash in the results view. So there's a whole different way of workflow, ways you can actually get a basis of what's going on in your model. Again, I can actually use my system classification. Look at what the system is here. It's a hydronic supply and a hydronic return. I probably would want to turn on those 2 systems and then look at the issues again. Right? Double click on it, turn on the issues, and now I get a better feel for where are these systems headed, right? Actually, that's over here where the clash was. It also gives you a great visual, making it transparent. The components that are clashing and highlighted as red is where the actual clash is. It also gives me this little dimension line, and sometimes this comes in handy. Like for instance, I could move this pipe out specifically 5 inches and it would no longer clash. But you want to get a feel for what's going on. And again, I could actually even multi-select on these and then use these selections to then filter all my results by them, right? And now only the clashes that these pipes have are now listed in my results. And what I can do now is focus on basics of clashing and coordination and these and this duct and this beam that's running across, right? And from here, I'm going to create an issue. I'm going to create an issue slide. I'm not going to go in too much depth because I'm going to conquer that task when I'm going through the BCF or communication. But this is where you'll essentially set, for instance, a date. Maybe I want to have it done by the end of the week and set whatever information you want. I'll just say move. I've got cap locks on. Move the pipe out from the duct and framing, right? And I can actually add multiple slides, right? I could turn back on my hydronic supply. And I could turn on my beams, and I could zoom in a little bit more, right? And now that I have this set, I want to set this to no visualization and say I want to add a slide here. And the beauty is now I can actually jump between these two visuals, and it'll come in handy when I'm using my CDE to show these issues. So again, you can get multiple viewpoints and multiple slides, right? And I'll just move on to the other checks, right? So that kind of sums up what you have for the clash matrix. Clearance checks. If it says all results are filtered out, that probably just means I have my filtering on. I want to set my visualizations back. So again, I'll come back to this this soft check. And normally, if you're not using this tool, you'd probably model a clearance geometry in front of this and just run a normal clash. But what this is doing, again, it's finding and has a different visualization and gives you more information about, what's the free area that you set up. It has to be a foot and 7/8 in front. And you have a pipe running into it, right? It's actually on this side. So again, I'll create a slide for this, right? I'll just say move the pipe in the wall. And it also gives you the location, right? It says my first floor, and it tells you it's my lab. And if I look here, sure enough, it's in my lab 1B04 on my first floor. So it gives you some information of where that issue's occurring. And again, if I wanted to, I can turn everything on. And this will probably be useful for when I'm looking at it in another application. And I can set some, what I'll do is I'll set some markups. And we have markup tools. You can do a cloud. I guess maybe I could draw it right here. And it superimposes the whatever you're drawing on whatever the surface is, which is very handy instead of just having it float in space. And I'll just say it has to move up and kind of follow this location here. And then I'll just add another slide, right? Here we go. So now again, I can zoom between these two different slides there. Right? And then moving on, this is where you'll be checking, say, for instance, your level of information types of checks of your properties, right? You look at these parameters. I'm going to check anything in the model. And what I want to do is say, all right, I want to check that all my air vents or all my air terminals are from the right libraries that I'm using. I don't want to use any generic components or generic types, right? So I select air terminals, and I can set this manually, right, by going through these and then looking at my listings here. But what I can also do, and what a lot of these rules have, is the ability to import Excel sheets, right? So rather than doing that, is I'm going to click this button, and again, this lives on OneDrive. And what I noticed today when I was going through, I keep modifying this so many times. It actually gives you that version control. This is the 8th version where I've modified this air terminal. If you actually want to look online, it lives right here. So what I could do is I could live doing this. I could erase these two, and then it would then update the information in Solibri. What I'll do is I'll just open it, and you can see how it imports, right? So I do have these two air terminal types, right? I don't want to include those. What it'll do is basically just, I'm cheating. I'm going to show some issues. It's hard to show issues with the model if there aren't issues. So I'm going to say that these aren't allowed values. I don't want 200 millimeters. And I don't want standard. It sounds too generic to me. But I'm also going to include some checks, and you can mix and match whatever components. You'd probably want to separate this out from your air terminals. But I'm going to include this just so you can get a feel for not only for different type libraries you can check, but also standardizing what you would use for information, for values for your fire ratings. 1 hour, 2 hour, you could be using minutes. You could say NA, or you could maybe not want to say it's not applicable and say you have to have something there. But I'm going to select all these and click finish, and boom, it loaded it up here, and it's actually synced. And whenever you want to update this, you can have somebody not using Solibri update that file that's on OneDrive. So now I'll click check model, and you'll see, I wonder why it's not showing me my, oh, do I have filtering on? What do I have wrong? It's not showing me my issue with my, oh, did I include those? Oh, that's why. I can't. It's hard to show issues if there's no issues. Everything's fine with my air terminals. If I didn't want to have these, I accidentally selected them. If I didn't want to have these, I would delete them out. Sorry. So now those aren't allowed values. I'll rerun the check, and now you'll see it saying the air terminal. Okay, live demo, my first issue here. And then you can see where the problems. Here's my air terminal. There's only one of them in the model. Maybe that would be an issue. Maybe I shouldn't be using this air terminal. I don't know. I'll say I'm going to add a slide here, and again, I'll turn everything on, and I'll maybe make this transparent, and then add another slide. Say odd terminal, air terminal. And then let's see. The other issues, no values. These are walls that don't have a fire rating. If I click on one, I can verify that by going into my BIM data, or actually my IFC standard data would be under wall common, and there should be a fire rating listed, or else it would be actually mapped from identity data fire rating. And what we have is another view called the check components view. And this essentially is the anti-skeptic view, where you can actually see what's been checked. You've checked 1,560 air terminals and walls for those values, right? And if I click on a wall that passes, you can actually see it does have a 2R rating. That's why it passes, right? Another beauty I should mention about this and classification is I could actually right-click and create a classification on the fly for all of my my walls. And you can see it's actually color-coded in my model, all the 1 hour and 2 hour. So again, validating information in LOI. If I wanted to, I can create a check for that. I would just have to rerun my check with that new classification. And let me just create a quick slide for all of my walls that don't have fire ratings. And then I'll just do a zoom out and kind of get a look for that. All right. Effective coverage. Let's see. Effective coverage. I'll touch on this quickly. Again, this is a different coordination check. It has a flat listing. You can actually show all of these as flat listing of issues, but you can actually categorize this however you want. I'm going to load a custom hierarchy. Again, this lives on my OneDrive. So I'll open it here. It's federated floor. And what this does, it's called federated floor. It takes whatever the architectural models floors are and then groups by that. And what this is, it's essentially showing me all of my coverage for fire ratings, or not for fire ratings, sorry, fire suppression terminals, sprinklers. So if I come over to this area here, you can see it's showing me in red, and they're kind of small and hard to see. But basically, it sprays 10 feet in every direction, a circle, I guess. And where there'd be a column, logically, the water wouldn't reach and wouldn't spray there. You can look, and you can see how this is set up. And you can tailor these to different settings. If you wanted to do distance of travel, you could set this, for instance, the distance for a fire extinguisher, how far you have to walk, or for ventilation. This is actually what the rule was based for. And the idea is that you'd use this, or the idea is that Solibri isn't really a one-trick pony. You can set these up. It's not a black box. You can actually go down the hood of the software and change these. For instance, if you didn't want to do occluded, you could say for Wi-Fi, going through walls and whatnot, okay? And with that, I'm going to jump right into model comparison using a different model. Again, you can see the different locations here. This, again, is a nice thing about the File tab and Recents. These models live on OneDrive. This is a model that just lives on my desktop called Version Comparison. And I'll go ahead and load this. And the easiest way to understand what's changed in this model is to actually just look before running the check, and I'll show you what's changed. So I have two versions of the same building. It's a real simple Solibri building, I guess one of the sample models. And if I click between these and turn them on and off, you can see the top room here. Its length is increased over here, the area of it. And what they've done is the original model had a single conference room. And what they did, which interestingly enough, what you'll see in the results here is they moved the wall over here and then knocked out this window. I thought they just drew a wall here, but what you can do is you click the checking view, and under component comparison, it has a nice listing of what's been added and what's been removed. And so what I didn't understand is like, okay, the wall is now dividing this conference room. Why is the new wall added here? And then you would actually look at what's been modified, the locations, the properties. And what they did was they moved the wall to bisect this conference room, added a suspended ceiling here, created a new door for the wall that they moved, and then dropped a new wall where the other wall was. So that explains that. Why are these toilets added and removed at the same time? What they did was they accident, or I don't know if it was an accident, they just changed out they deleted instead of changing the type. And when you delete something, it makes a new entity handle, or I guess it would be a model element ID. But you can change these to whatever properties you want, right? You can modify these, and if you wanted to focus on just lengths, I could change the properties that I want to check to just be my lengths. Oops. Let's click all these. You can multi-select, but I'll just do this. And say I just want to focus on quantities, and these are lengths that are calculated in Solibri. Another interesting thing about this model, if you rerun the check and you look at what's modified in terms of lengths, the columns, and this is actually caught with one of our rules, the whether or not something's the surface is touching. What happened was in the original model, these columns aren't actually reaching the top of the roof, so they're not really supporting it. And you can actually check for that with one of our rules. But in this one, they moved them up, and that's why the length has changed. And now you can actually verify that with this length, showing that the length of these columns has changed from 8 feet to 10 feet. So you'll get all that reported, and you can actually use this report to show the deltas of what's been added, what are the different lengths, and whatnot. So very useful, because you'll be telling somebody, all right, I need something changed, and they'll do the job of changing it. But you also want to know what are the ramifications of them changing that. What else has been modified in the model when they made that adjustment, right? So now, jumping back into our presentation, I've got some issues, and I want to communicate them. And how am I going to do that? Well, the most seamless way and collaborative way is through BCF. Again, BCF is another open standard for Building Smart. It stands for BIM collaboration format, building information model collaboration format. And what that is essentially, and you don't really need to know about BCF. It's really, the whole point of it is to transfer information, but it essentially stores an issue report along with where the camera is positioned and what it's focusing on, what components are supposed to be isolated in the view. And Solibri is 25 years old software, and we've been doing our reports, long before even the cloud and BCF has been around. So there's plenty of different Excel report templates you can use. You can create your own. And again, if you don't want to use security issues, don't want to hold your issues up on the cloud, you can send them off either from email or in your own little secure shared folders, these customizable reports, which can be PDFs, Excels, or what have you. Or you can save it off to our native format, the SMC, which will store all the issue information along with the 3D geometry and highly compresses it down to like 80% of what it was of your original model. So, and again, it'll track all the information that's important to you, who's supposed to fix it, what are the dates, what are the priorities, and all the comments that go across with who's authored that comment and what date it was set. And for that, I'll just jump right back into Solibri. I've created some of those issues. What I'll show now is that you can create your own report and run it within Solibri. And this is the way you do it before, right? You open up Solibri, or you could send this off as an SMC, and people can load this up in their Anywhere viewer, which you can find online and register. And then anybody can look at these. They just can't create new rules and whatnot, but they can still create comments. And from here, I can create a coordination report, for instance. Let's see, coordination report template. I'll just save a report. You can actually modify this to your own templates of whatever information you want, but I'll just click save report and save it on my desktop. And what this is, essentially, is each row is each issue. You have a nice little snapshot. And this is the old way of doing it. What I want to focus on is the BCF Live connector. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect up into Catenda. So I'm going to click on this. And if I click this, you can see all the different connections we have. Again, we have CDE connections where those are where you're going to house your IFCs. This is where you're going to house your issues. And again, you can see a whole long listing. And again, this uses the open standard BCF APIs in order for Solibri to easily connect up into those. And so we have a big long listing. I'm going to connect up specifically to Catenda. When I click Catenda, here is my project. I'm going to start a synchronization. Right. And now you're going to see actual issues that live up on Catenda that I haven't even created in Solibri, right? So I'll let those load. And if I don't want to focus on these closed ones, I can actually filter these. I could filter them by whoever they're assigned to. If I only want to filter them by ones that are assigned to me as John Lipp, I could do that. I'll just set it to be only those that are open. And what this sync does is every 5 seconds, it's going to sync up to Catenda. And depending on when you click, whenever you do something, it'll take that 5 seconds to update. So now I'm only going to focus on the issues in Catenda that are open. What this was nothing I created with you now. It's the one that lives on Catenda under their topics. And if I jump back into Catenda now, you can see that these are issues that I created in Catenda. They call them topics. And this is the same issue here. It's just entrance. And it's really not an issue. I have it set to unknown. So you can actually see, if I jump back into Solibri, that's what this value is. If I wanted to change this, I could go back into my issue details. And instead of saying unknown, I could say it's info, right? Mark is ready. And then you see this little spinning icon here. And then when I come back into Catenda, this should then show, instead of unknown, what I set it to, info. Oh, I have to set this mark as ready. Okay, the check mark has appeared. And then this should automatically update to info. I might have to click refresh. I'm not sure. Entrance. Yeah, info. So it's updated. So it's alive. Everything that syncs up is live, and whatever you change will then get pushed up into Catenda. What I want to do is actually I want to push the ones that I have created with you up into Catenda. So what I'm going to do is import my issues, and I'm going to import them from my checking results. And now you can see those ones that I created during this demonstration are now included, right? My walls that don't have fire ratings. Here's that issue with my air terminal. And here again is my window, and it has those comments. And now what I can do now is mark all these as ready, and you'll see this now has that little check mark will turn in, or my little spinny arrows will then turn into my check marks, and I can go back into my topics here in Catenda and work from those. If I come back in here, it should start opening. I'll run a refresh. Yep, they're starting to show. So again, it's going up on the web, pushing them up there. And check. So if I go back, these should start populating. So here they come. Again, this is that air terminal that wasn't there before. And again, it's a live, I can actually look at this within the model, right? Turn everything on, and it'll take me to that specific location. If I click on it here it is. Again, if I wanted to turn on everything, I can then show all and then see here my location. This is that air terminal. That's odd to me. Here's a more interesting one. Again, this is the view that I created within Solibri. But if I go to the actual issue here, I can go and then see these components. Actually, this is not the same one. Where is it? This is the one here. Sorry, this is the one I wanted to show you. Here's my here's the model here. So again, this is the issue that I created in Solibri, and it gives me the information, move pipe in the wall, and I could say, all right, this is fixed. I got my cap locks on. This is fixed. Submit, and then when I update Solibri, actually I don't have to update because it's a live sync. When I come to this, should update with my new comment here. Under comments, it says this is fixed. So it's all in real time. So this is how you can coordinate seamlessly with your team, right? And it's all standardized. Whatever the information, you'll have the same labels or whatever you're using in your issue management software. I'm running out of time, but I will briefly show you ITO. Now, ITO, if I come back to my slide, essentially it allows you to report information. Again, I mentioned, and more than just quantities, you can report any information within the model and visualize it, similar to what you have in your classifications. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load my space ITO information takeoff, and I'm going to run a takeoff all. And again, what it's doing is it's using this classification to now sum up the total areas of these circulation spaces. And again, it knows that by the classification I made, right? So here are all my circulation spaces, and it has a running total. I can actually select multiple ones if I want to see what is the total of my circulation in office. I select both of these, and then this value is the additional 5,000 plus the 100. If you want to see how easy it is to create one of these, even though I'm running out of time, it's so fast. I can run a takeoff all of everything, and it shows me all of my types. If I want to modify this, say my type name, it's more detailed. Here are all my columns on my first floor, right? I got 36 of this type, 30 of that type, 29 of that. And you can see it's actually color coding these by the types, right? This looks more like a footing. And then I can add to that. Anything you add to the leftmost column is what you're going to be sorting on, and also what it's going to be grouping on. So I take off all. Now I can see all of my first floor columns. I have 2 types on my first floor here, right? And I want quantities. I can click a new column. I click new column. I could take the quantities that come from Revit under property set, dimension. Not sure it's going to be the right one. Let's see. Set dimension. And then let's see, I should have a length there. I think that's what it'll be within here. Let's see if we get it. Yay. So I got my lengths here, but I can also get the dimensions or the lengths straight from the geometry within Solibri. So again, I'll do the length here. And now you can see if there's a difference. Here are my first floor columns. 31, 17. Yep, that's good. They both match. So the actual dimensions in Revit match the ones of the actual geometry, which is good. Say actually IFC, or I should say ITO, visually allows you to also validate your model, right? And if I wanted to create a report, I can select these, isolate them into a different layout, and I could run a takeoff all, takeoff selected. Normally you want to have more items here, but I just want to show you, you can run a report here and then send this off and save this off up in the cloud if you wanted, and create a report of your whatever information you want to pull out, and create schedules of these components. So, and that's it. So from that, I'll hand it back to Prinostat here to follow up with any questions you might have.
All right. So I just want to see, does anybody here have any questions that you might have? Check the chat. Jimmy and Mike. Really cool. Can you talk to us about running a big job with a bunch of low-tech contractors that aren't nearly as tech savvy and amazing as this group of people? John?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, out of the box, if that's kind of going over your head, we have any, like if I just open up, for instance, or go back into my checks for clearances, right? It comes out of the box. If you just want to set up and pick and choose, like you can take this and grab whatever you find interesting. Say, for instance, you wanted to see clearance, where was it? Deficiency detection. Where's my other model? I'll show you a simpler model. Where is it? Here's my office. If you wanted to check to see just if your columns are above it, again, you just run this check. I'll open my rule sets that are open, and I'll pick and choose something. So you don't have to be a guru. You can say deficiency detection. I like this components above columns, and I know that there's an issue there. I can now run this check and see this type of check. Columns don't touch anything. Again, this is that model where it wasn't having those columns. So the whole beauty of this is that you have somebody learn Solibri, and you can have multiple users have licenses of Solibri to run the checks, but you create a rule set, and then all you'd have to do is click. And we have tools that automate this as well. You don't have to go through each issue and writing slides. It's probably the best way to go about it to make sure it's an actual problem. But we have a tool called Auto Run. So you can actually have Solibri run overnight, run your checks, create your reports. And the beauty of the whole open BIM automation is that maybe you don't want to use Solibri. Maybe you don't want to like go through the process of creating these. Maybe you want to just push all these issues up into the cloud. And the way you want to work is that you want to go straight into Contenda and not work with Solibri. That's fine. That's completely fine. You can work from here, have somebody still work in Solibri or not, and do your coordination after you find the issues straight up in Contenda or whatever CDE that you're using. Again, does that answer the question? And the beauty again of this clash matrix is that you don't have to go through the process of creating rules for each individual each individual trade. If I open up BIM coordination, you can see here I have a more complex looking rule set where it's your architectural, it's your doors, your beams. Might be a little bit overwhelming to look at. Again, if I just open up, if I just drag and drop in my from my rule set manager, again, one of these templates like the clash detection matrix. It's as simple as that. You're gonna use the default matrix, uses IFC. If you're familiar with IFC, you can just use that. Again, it'll just then give me my issues here, my architectural checks, and I can see things that are useful. Columns versus columns. Well, this doesn't count because I have two models, so obviously they're going to overlap. But that's the gist of it. You don't have to be a guru of knowing all the rule sets in order to get your workflow going. And our help, I haven't shown it, but we have detailed help topics. I think I have it here. If you don't know what rule you want to use, you can type in what rule. I think it'll pop up. What's it? Understanding rules. We have each one of these rules gives you information on what the parameters are. You can see it within the help topics here, or you can actually go right into Solibri. And if you want to understand what a rule does, I can click on, say, for instance, free area in front. Where is it? Double click on this, and it'll take me right to that rule of how you set it up, right? But a lot of the out-of-the-box rules you should be able to grab and drag and drop and make use of.
I did have another question relating to, you guys get to see a large quantity of buildings pass through your server or like your software. Do you have any information on what is like the most, quote unquote, the most popular building that you have go through, like square footage wise, things along those lines?
Yeah. Well, actually, we do have it on the cloud, but that's the beauty, is that this information, we're not actually collecting information of what these models are. So the only way I would know the different types of models is working with our customers, which we do. When a customer purchases Solibri, we definitely help you out and create help you in assisting creating your rule sets and whatnot. And the best way to do that is to look at your models straight up there and run your checks. Like if you were to run a trial, we would want you to actually open up your models, and that's how I know the different types of models. And we see a whole variety of we see data centers that are very, very complex. We see these mega hospital structures with over 20 different disciplines of medical gas, anything you can think of, all the way down to smaller boutique architectural firms that just want to check smaller models and whatnot. So our customers, again, are owners, GCs, contractors, architects, and we see a wide variety of different types. And again, we have different use cases and different rules that can assist depending on if you're an architect or not. BIM validation architecture. We have the here's our MEP, or even structural checks. So again, any discipline, and on top of this, these rules that might not be there, I didn't even mention we have our extensions that are on the Solution Center. For instance, our ADA accessibility checks live here. They live right here. COBE, Construction Owner Building Information Exchange, basically facilities management. Here is, we have different standards from, I think there's a Swedish area calculation. So a whole variety of different use cases, a whole variety of different stakeholders can use the product.
Super cool.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like there's any more questions in the chat, and I just wanted to remind everybody that this was being recorded, and anybody that signed up for the webinar will get an email to them, and I believe it's going to be posted up on our YouTube page also. And I just wanted to say that it's 1 o'clock. I don't want to hold anybody else up. Thank you for your time for attending today's webinar as we introduced you guys to Solibri. If you need any more information, how Solibri fits into your BIM workflow, training, a quote, just reach out to Ben or I, and we can help you assist with that solution.